Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. We have a lot of information to give you regarding life's vital records. And what does that mean? What do we need to do, and how do we accomplish it? Number one, what we're going to do is we are going to get a binder. A 3-ring binder is what you're going to need, a minimum of a 1-inch binder. Every person should have one of these. And if you are a husband wife and you want one versus the two, and you want to put everything in one, go right ahead. You'll need a larger binder, a 2.5 to 3-inch binder to make this work. So when you open up your binder, you are going to have tabs that you need to purchase. These tabs are going to help you stay organized and know exactly what you need, where you need to put it in case of an emergency. So why are we doing this? It's imperative that you have a grab and go should something take place, God forbid. Let's say it's your spouse. You wake up, you find them in your bed, they've passed, and you've called 911, you've started CPR, and nothing worked. EMS gets there, and they start asking a lot of questions. What's his social security number? What's his date of birth? Where would you like for me to take him? What's your doctor's name? What's your doctor's phone number? And they're going through all of this because those are items that are needed for them to fill out their paperwork. Additionally, let's say that your spouse is not under the care of hospice and he passes. What happens is in North Carolina, you must call the sheriff's department or the city police, and they will come and they will do a death investigation. This is mandatory in the state. So they get there and they start asking all these questions because they want to make sure that this was a natural death and not something that they need to investigate further. So what will go on is they're going to start asking you all these questions as well. What medicines was he on? Had he been sick? Had he been in the hospital? What are his parents' names? What's his social security number? And when things like that are happening, you can't just come off the top of your head with all of those answers. It seems pretty basic, and you think, sure, I can. Being in the medical and healthcare field for over 32 years, running assisted livings and memory care communities, I have witnessed and been part of families going through this tragic event. I've witnessed it just a couple of months ago with my neighbor next door, and she had been a nurse her entire career. And when this emergency happens and it happens to you, you don't know how you're going to react. And emotions are going bananas, and it's hard to think. What do you need? You need a book where all of that information is there, and all you got to do is grab your book, hand it to them, and breathe. I say breathe because you can step back, you can breathe, you can answer their questions, and the majority of everything they're going to need is right here for them. Okay? Let's get started and learn what we need to have in our Life's Vital Records book should an emergency take place. Okay? I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we're going to discuss the items that are in your vital records book. You're going to have a section of nothing but identification, and each one of these tabs will have this specific information in it. Now, I will tell you that the first section is called information, and the information is right here. It's everything you need. You owe it to yourself and your family to complete this personal estate planning record. Keep in mind that as you progress with your estate plans, your attorney should counsel you on all aspects of your plans, as well as a draft of all legal documents. Of course, we would also be happy to assist you with your charitable intentions at the onset and after you have completed the record, should you decide you want to make charitable contributions. Those pieces would be a separate form at the end of your book. Okay, and that way you know ahead of time, your family knows ahead of time for any charitable contributions you want to make that you have may or may not have already said to them. Okay, so you're going to have all of this information: your name, your address, your phone number, your email, your date of birth, your birthplace. Where is your birth certificate? Do you have a copy of one? You need it. What if you don't have the original? It's okay. Make sure you've got a copy in this book. What's your social security number? Were you adopted? Where are those documents? Where can your spouse or your children find your tax records? The titles or leases on any properties? Do you have stock and bond certificates, and where are those located? You need a list of the stocks and bonds, where you have them, and what stocks or what company you use to manage your portfolio. You also need your military service, your branch, the years you were in service, and the location of those documents. It is a very good and wise decision to have a copy of these or the original in this book. Multiple reasons why. Let's say you are downsizing and you are going into an assisted living. You may be entitled to VA benefits to help subsidize for your care, and they're going to need your military documents in order to make that paperwork be processed. Am I saying have them here? I think it's a good idea if it's nothing but a copy in your originals in your safety deposit box or wherever you keep them. You also want to make sure that your parents are listed, where they were born, where their resting place is, their date of birth, their date of death. A lot of us have step parents, and those names need to be completed as well. You're saying, but Stephanie, why is this important? Well, they are important because these are people that are related to you, and if they're not deceased, then we need to get in touch with them to let them know what's going on. Or your family needs to have information because they need to know where to go and find what's happening, their ancestral pieces, and it will just take form, and this is a good starting space. It's also used when creating your funeral information for the funeral home. You also need your spouse's information. Well, what if I'm not married, but I've been living with someone for 15 years or 7 years? their information is here because you're treating that significant other, the person you're sharing your home with, the person you're sharing your day-to-day in your life with, it needs to be listed here. If you have separated or divorced previously, what was that person's name? What was the date of the marriage? Where is that certificate or that divorce or separation decree? And do you have at least a copy in your vital records book? It's a good idea to have it because when someone passes, all of this information are things that you can either be receiving money on, get money on, or you need this for documentation on many, many other different processes. You want to make sure all of your children are listed, their date of birth, where they were born, if you adopted them, and where those documents are. What is the license, the driver's license in the state? Because if you have this, let's say they live out of state and you haven't been able to see them, for instance, like COVID, and you haven't seen them in 2 years. That happened. We never thought this would be a situation we would say we haven't seen our kids. However, it's more prevalent than you can fathom, actually, and authorities may need to reach them. Let's say you have died in a car wreck. You don't need this vital records book there, but you need to tell your kids and you need to tell your family, I've got a book. This has all of my information in it, and you grab it if something happens to me, everything is written down. Wouldn't that make it a lot easier for you and for your family? Guarantee it. Now, I don't know about you, but my pets are part of my family. So I'm going to have their names. I'm going to have what kind of dog or cat they are, what color they are, the vet's information. Do they need special food? Are they on medicines? I want them to be able to receive the best care possible, even if I'm not here. So we need to make sure that they are taken care of. And then finally, we are getting into what is the employer information? Did you go and work at one job for 32 years and retire? Or did you have a couple of different jobs? And if you did have a couple of jobs, what were they? Are you retired? Where was it? What's the phone number? What day did you start or year? When did you retire? And do you have ownership interest in that? This is also going to help with doing the eulogy and getting everything documented for your burial. Do we have any questions with this part of the documentation? Awesome. I think we're good to go. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to dissect the first sheet of paper I showed you with all of the identifying information. The first one is going to be your birth certificate. That birth certificate, you have an original or you have a copy so that you can have it in your vital records book. You're also then going to have your ID cards, your driver's license, your VA ID card, your Social Security card. Maybe it's a copy of your passport. Anything that's identifying information, you're going to have a copy and you're going to put it in your book. You're also going to have your marriage certificate. Why? Because those are things we ask for. And when it's time for you to go through the process of doing all the paperwork to get the life insurance policies and to get various items, should you end up having to go through probate, which I pray this is going to prevent, you have all of the information you need right here in your book to take to your attorney or to send where you need it. So you've got your marriage certificate. You've also got your divorce or separation agreement. Here again, you can have the original or you can have a copy. It's entirely up to you. If your spouse has already passed, you will need to keep a copy of the death certificate or an original. You're going to ask for at least 10 to 12 copies. And they're in North Carolina, they're $10 a piece. And you will put those right here in your book. You're going to have to use them for all of the legal documents. When you send off to get money for the insurance policies, you've got to prove date of death. You're going to have to prove that you're married. If you're not already listed, you're going to have to prove so much. And having as much of this ready up front is what's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headache. And you're just going to be able to breathe. You're going to be able to focus on what is happening right then. And you're not going to be, you're going to be stressed, but you're not going to be stressed with where do I get this information? They need it. What am I going to do? Okay. We're also going to have all of your military paperwork. Mentioned that just a second ago. What about your discharge papers? What about your rank and any accommodations you won? All of that's going to go right here in this section. It can be a copy, it can be the original. Your next section is gonna be passwords. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen again. And with this, let's go here and keep going. There we go. We're going to go to the password keeper. And this is a section in your file, in your book, and you're going to write down every website, your username, and your password. Why is this important? Well, I need someone to go in and deactivate all of my social media. I need someone to go in and have access and be able to close out some things in my bank account, my online. I need someone to go in and take care of insurance pieces, or maybe that's how I take care of and communicate with other business partners. Or what about the pharmacy? They send me things, right? So you want to make sure someone has access to the websites you frequent, your username, and your passwords. You want to go ahead and delete those out, and they can do that. That's why this is so important. You're also going to have a section for your banking and your account information. You're going to use this form in two sections. You're going to use this in your banking for your checking and savings for all of your accounts. And you're also going to use it in the next section, which are any investments, your stocks, your bonds, your portfolio pieces. You're going to list the type of account it is, the bank or institution that it's with, your account number, a specific person that you talk with all the time, and their phone number. Why is this important? Because you may have 3 or 4 checking accounts and 2 or 3 savings accounts, and they're all at different banks, and you only have a check for a checkbook with only one of those banks. How is anybody going to know where all you bank if you don't list it? Same goes for the investment property. You might work with Merrill Lynch. or you may work with another stock or portfolio company. That's great. List it. You don't have to list the account number unless you have it that you're talking with them about. And then you say, this is the person I call and this is the number. You may have investment properties, and it can be, maybe it's rental property, and you need to put here's the account, this or the address. This is where I do everything out of it. This is the account I use for it. And this is the phone number. You need to have these pieces in place. You're also going to use a form very similar to this when you're writing down all of your my mind went blank. Mercy. When you're writing down your life insurance information, maybe it's life insurance, maybe it is cancer policies or supplemental policies, maybe it's your health, your life, your Medicare supplements, your TRICARE, maybe it's Geico for your auto insurance, your homeowner's insurance, all insurance types you need to list. It's right there included in the information that you can say, Stephanie, I want this information to make my book, and I will email you this list. It's in there. You fill this out. It's available. You're just filling in the lines. That way, you know where your information is and your family has it. We're now going to get into the section where I like to call it more of the estate and health section, where we are planning should something happen to us and what do we need to do. I've got grown kids, a 33 and a 27-year-old. What happens if something happens to me and they know about this book? Do they know who will take over and see that everything's okay? Do they know mom wants this person to do this? Do they know mom's last wishes and how I want to be cared for? Do I want life-saving measures, or do I just want to say, peace out? It's time for me to meet my maker. Those are questions that you need to answer. Those are conversations. They're not easy, but as we age, these are things we need to think about. It's not even a getting old piece. If you've got children, then your children need to have something in place should something happen to you, so that they don't make those decisions and have to decide, do we leave mama in this situation with feeding tubes and ventilators, or do we let her go? What would mama want? And sometimes we don't think rationally. We think with our heart, because these 12 inches between our heart and our head creates so much chaos that we are only thinking about our heart and not what our head's telling us. It makes it difficult. So this prevents any of that and prevents your children from having to make those decisions. So there are a couple of things. There's a healthcare power of attorney and a financial power of attorney. There's also something called a dual power of attorney, and that's when that person handles both the healthcare and the finances. A lot of people have it where if you've got a couple of children, one handles the finances, one handles the health care. In other situations, it's a combination. Sometimes you may not want either child to handle it, and you name a third party. That's entirely okay. It's acceptable. What if your kids are small? They can't make these decisions. Who's going to take care of them? What do you have in place to say, if this happens to me, I want this person to take my children? I know it's scary and we don't like to think about it, but this is not just an aging tool. This is a family tool. And that's how we need to think about it. So healthcare power of attorney gives that person the okay to make financial and healthcare decisions for you if you're doing dual. If you're doing just the healthcare, it's just the healthcare piece. A lot of people, I'm going to use my parents for an example because they're on here. They want us, my sister and I, to make the decisions collectively. Now, me being in the healthcare piece, I'm going to be quick to do it. My sister doesn't have any of that. So she's going to say, okay, Stephanie, what are we going to do? I want to know, and I think that's best. But like I've told my parents, if you want something specific done or not done, now's the time to write it down. Get it in an advance directive, which is the next piece we're going to talk about, and tell me everything you do and do not want. Do you want full-on CPR and us to do everything in the world possible to keep you alive? That can mean a tracheotomy. That can mean a feeding tube. That can mean you never walk again, but you are in a wheelchair and you do fine, or maybe you don't. I tell people all the time, when I do CPR, especially on mature adults, and when I say mature, I'm talking about us that are aging. I don't say if I'm going to break bones. I say I will, and hopefully I will not puncture your lung. This is a very, very real scenario. When you do CPR, bones get broken. And you don't have to be old to have broken bones when you're pressing and doing CPR. Okay? Those can cause additional issues that we're not looking to do. We're just trying to save your life. Do you want it done? Do you not want it done? Do you want to stay on life support for 1 to 2 weeks? Or do you say, no, I don't want it at all, or I want it for a specific time? You have the option to say what you want, how long you want, and get very specific so that your family knows your wants and wishes and can see that those are carried out. Another piece that you're going to have is when you're talking about a do not resuscitate. That's part of the advanced directives. And when you have that form, you need to have several with you, one in your car, one in your wallet. At home, whether you are living independently or somewhere else, put that do not resuscitate. We call it the goldenrod because it's gold in color with red writing. And you put that on the back door of your bedroom. The reason I say this, it's a quick, I know where it's at, let me grab it. And you're not having to worry about someone doing CPR and starting your life again if your heart stops. If you want it, great. If you don't, you need to put something in place. That's the do not resuscitate, and that will go with your advanced directives. We're now going to talk about what do you need for the funeral and your pre-need and preparing for that. What's a pre-need? A pre-need is when you say, okay, I don't want my kids to have to plan my funeral. I don't want them to have to go through all of that. I want to do that and have it ready. So all they've got to do is concentrate on each other, remember the good times with me, and not have to make a lot of decisions. So a pre-need is where you go to the funeral home of your choice and you say, I want to get my pre-need in order. You go ahead and prepay or start paying on your funeral. Some people say they want a traditional funeral. Some say they want to be cremated. Some people want to be buried in family plots or at a family plot. Some people want to be buried at a church. You name the cemetery. You have the plot information written down. You pick out your casket or your urn. You go ahead and you make all of those arrangements. Then you sit there and you say, well, I want this person to sing a song and I want this person to do this, or maybe you just want a private funeral, or you may not want a funeral at all, and it's okay. You just have to let someone know. And without the pre-planning, it doesn't go the way you want it. So you do the pre-need. You have it all written down, including who you want as pallbearers. If you want a certain spray or flowers, you're going to write that down, because I want it to be made easy for my kids. I've already done it. Here it is. All you got to do is, here's the book. Everything's written down for you. And it's all organized. You don't have to try and figure out where it's at. It's all right here. My children lost their dad. April 6th will be 2 years ago. Totally unexpected. It was devastating. And he did not have any of this written down. He didn't have anything in place. And they ended up having to go through probate. It was not an easy situation. And my daughter was the one who stepped up and was doing everything, getting it all together. She was telling her brother was like, okay. That's not unusual. If he would have had this book and had things done and have his will, which we're going to talk about in just a second, it could have been handled so much quicker instead of taking almost a year to get through. It was an emotional drain. It was reliving his unexpected death every time she had to deal with something. Make it easier for your family and those around you, and make sure everything is being done the way you want it. Now we're going to talk about your will. The will is not something that you necessarily have to have in this book, but you do if you've named an executor of your estate. That one page needs to be there so that it's easy to say this person is the executor of the estate and they're going to handle everything. My neighbor, they said they had one named. However, they never got the paperwork signed. They completed the paperwork and they did it online. It's never notarized. When you're doing this, even with the healthcare and the financial power of attorney, put at least 2 names down. If something happens to one of them, you've got the second one to fall back on. A minimum of 2 people. If something happens, update it. All of these things can be updated and it doesn't take very long to do. Now, where do you go to get all of this information? You can go and see an estate attorney, and the estate attorney can get every bit of these documents for you. You can then have it in your book, in your safety deposit box. You can have it in your safe, but you need to get it recorded at the local courthouse. Why? You want these things recorded so that someone else can't jump up and say, well, I'm the one that's in charge. I'm the one that gets to do this. I'm the one that whatever. You make sure your doctor has an original or a copy of your POA, financial and health care, and for the advanced directives, he needs an original. The DNR, he writes out, and it is always an original. You cannot make a copy of that. There are plenty of resources so that you can go online and you can print all of these documents. You can fill them out, print it out, and I think it's like $39 to $75 depending on what site you go on. And then you do not sign it. You take it to a notary, you have it signed in front of them, then it's a legal document. Or you go to an attorney. An estate attorney is fabulous, or a family law attorney. They are fabulous and can draw these up very simply for you. Now, if you want more information, send me a text, give me a buzz. My number is 704-467-0552. It's in the link, and I'll be happy to send you over all of the vital record information, all of the paperwork that you can use to create your Life's Vital Records book today. Make it easier for your family. It's definitely one of those items that once you finish, it's done. Only had to do it once for me, once for him, and it's here. You can always just put everything in one big one. That's fine. Just make sure your family knows where it is and have that difficult conversation today. And just say, we're planning. We're not saying anything's imminent. We're just planning. And you need to know what we've got in store. If you need anything, I'm a call away. And thank you for joining.